7th grade. Let's go ahead and get things started here. As I mentioned, you need these supplies. You need your science notebook. We'll be recording notes over 2 brand new chapters today. Now, then, in addition, you need your textbook. We'll be going there just a little bit. Now, I know some of you guys already read ahead, but we're going to stop and pause on those most important parts, bless you, of chapter 3 and then chapter 4. So, now, today's agenda. We're going to learn about 2 types of transport. Transport sounds like the word transportation, doesn't it? That's exactly what it is. Transportation on a cellular level. All right. We're going to learn about passive transport and active transport. So you'll learn what they are and learn the difference between the 2. And then we're going to specifically look at 2 types of passive transport. Now, the 2 types that we're going to discover tie in with tomorrow's at-home experiment. You're going to learn about osmosis and diffusion in today's class, and then you start applying that tomorrow in your at-home experiment. By the way, for that experiment, you do need a few supplies. So for those of you listening at home, you'll need the following supplies. You'll need vinegar. You'll also need corn syrup. You'll need water, which you probably already have. You'll need 3 eggs and 3 cups. And if you have a scale, just a small kitchen scale, please use that in your experiment. If you don't have one, there's no need to go out and purchase one just for this at-home lab, though. All right, so we'll go more in depth into that lab and what to expect on it here later in class. Our title for today is Cell Membranes. Just make sure that's included in your table of contents in your notebooks. And then let's turn to page 54 of our text. We're going to discover what a cell membrane is and why it's so important. All right, so I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and travel there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read, but I'm going to stop and pause at certain keywords, okay? So you guys as a class, help me out. Help me fill in the missing words that I'll leave blank, okay? Y'all ready? All right, here we go on page 54. Cell membranes. How can a cell survive when it is so tiny and so
fragile?
Oh, that was weak. Only one person. Thank you, Drew. Well, let's have everyone participate, okay? So here we go again. How can a cell survive when it is so tiny and
Fragile.
Oh, much, much better. What keeps a cell's insides in and its surroundings out? How does a cell stay intact? Each cell is surrounded by a
Cell membrane.
A thin covering that forms the outer
Boundary.
of the cell. The membrane senses and responds to changes in its surrounding
Environment.
It protects the cell from harmful substances, but also allows needed materials into the cell. Similar membranes enclose many of the smaller structures inside your cells. Now, so we know that your body's made of billions and billions of cells, isn't it? But each and every one of those cells has a thin outside covering. And that thin outside covering is so vital and it's so important to you. It's keeping your cell alive, which God designed to keep you alive, didn't he? So let's do this. Let's bring some meaning to the cell membrane. Let's discover how important it is to your survival. So the cell membrane is simply this. It's the outside boundary of a cell. So all the billions of cells that make you have an outside boundary called the cell membrane. Even plant cells have a cell membrane. Even bacteria have a cell membrane. And you can even see, even in this cute little handsome cell on the screen, it has a cell membrane, an outside protective layer. You know, a cell membrane is kind of like the walls of our classroom. The walls of our classroom serve a purpose, don't they? They keep us in, keep intruders out. For example, if we go into lockdown mode, You want a wall here.
Oh yeah.
And you want a door that locks. So walls are kind of like cell membranes. Notice we can get sunlight in through our windows. You can enter and exit that door. So there are times when we want stuff to get in through a boundary, and there are times when we don't want things to get in through a boundary, right? Cell membranes are the same. Cell membranes protect your cells. Now the cool thing is, your cells can respond to their environment. Your cells interact with other cells around them. Your cells let healthy things inside them. They keep bad things out. And they even push things that are unwanted out of themselves.
So basically it's like throwing up.
Yeah. Cells, in a sense, throw up. They let things out that they don't want. Yeah, good point. All right. So a cell membrane protects it, doesn't it? It protects the cell from harm. Kind of like this defensive line in the picture. Gentlemen, the defensive line, their goal, their purpose is to protect that quarterback, isn't it? Well, cell membranes are kind of like that. They protect the inside of the cell. Now, in addition, sometimes the cell wants good things in. You know, sometimes that defensive line will actually allow the other team to enter and to get past them, maybe through a trick play. So your cell membrane is kind of like a guardian. It lets the good stuff in, keeps the bad stuff out. And in fact, in one of the earlier classes, a student made a really good analogy. Sorry, it's kind of political, but I thought it was hilarious. They made the analogy and they said a cell membrane is kind of like Donald Trump's wall.
I knew it. Wait, who said that?
So basically, the wall keeps people out that we don't want to enter, right? It also has breaches in it or gates in it so we can get to and from if we need to. So anyway, I thought it was kind of comical.
Well, it's
So-
true.
So you can see here the cell membrane definitely is a barrier, isn't it? So some things it's going to let in, some things it's going to push out, and other things it's not going to let inside the cell at all. All right, so let's think about this. You help me. Tell me what you already know. Let's take a look at this cell model or illustration. Let's say this is our handsome cell of science. You see its cell membrane, that protective layer. But let's add some things to our illustration. Can you think of some things that this cell would like to get inside of? Let's see, Drew.
Sugar, craters.
Ooh, we all love sugar, right? Do our cells like sugar? Absolutely. Sugar is also known as food, isn't it? So why don't you make a simple illustration in your notes, drawing this cell. You don't have to put all the parts and pieces in there quite yet. We'll learn them later. But this cell would love to get food inside it, wouldn't it? Like sugar or glucose. Can you think of anything else that this cell would love to get inside? I mean, cells need food. What else do they need?
Energy.
Energy. Huh. You know what? Really, our food is energy, isn't it? So I'm going to do this. So our cells need energy. They get that through the food that they absorb. Okay, great. Can anyone think of anything else that the cell would love to get inside or let inside? Result?
Water.
That's pretty essential to life, isn't it? All right, so absolutely. So let's draw in an arrow showing water. H2O. All right, so the cell needs water, doesn't it? So it's going to gladly let water in. Can you think of anything else the cell might really, really need? Yes, Abby.
Oxygen.
Oxygen, absolutely. The cell needs oxygen, doesn't it? So I'm going to put
Oxygen
O.
is just O.
Yep.
Okay.
The chemical symbol for oxygen is O. So this cell really needs these three things. It needs food or energy, it needs water, and it needs oxygen, doesn't it? So let's make sure and add these things to our illustration as well. All right, can you think of anything a cell doesn't want to allow to come inside though? Something that it would say, no, thou shalt not enter. Yes?
Bad bacteria.
Ooh, grody. It doesn't want bacteria in there, right? So that bacteria is just going to get bounced off. The cell's not going to let it in. So let's add that. Bacteria. Yuck. Anything else the cell would not want to enter?
Maybe a sickness or disease.
Ooh, a sickness, disease, or virus.
What would these be called?
Like the Rona, COVID. Your cells don't want COVID to enter, right?
This would be like cells. Cells like stuff they don't need.
Correct. So things your cell does not want to let in. Yes,
So I was going to say about bacteria, but there's a such thing as good bacteria and bad bacteria.
there is.
So
Yes,
the cell
we
doesn't
have
want-
good bacteria living in our gut, don't we?
So the cell doesn't want any type of bacteria.
No, it depends.
Okay.
It could, for example, the bacteria living in your gut or in your stomach, we want that. But other bacteria, it's going to say no. Another thing we could say is germs, which are viruses or bacteria, but just, another word. Let's see. Now let's think about something else, though. There are times when your cell pushes out certain things as well, things that it no longer needs. In fact, well, you do this.
Oh, Mr. Critic.
It's science.
It's a character.
You go to the restroom and you do your duty, and you get rid of stuff. It's science. We all do that, right? So what is it that you think a cell also needs to get rid of? Nobody?
It has to exit.
Other cells.
Other cells? Not necessarily.
No. I know. Sugars or nutrients that they don't use.
Okay. Maybe excess that they don't need any longer. That's possible.
I'm gonna
Usually
go-
it's in the form of, we'll call it waste.
Mm.
Yeah. When you go to the restroom, we'll call that waste. It's stuff you don't need any longer, right? Well, your cells do the same thing. You take in food, you take in energy, you take in water, and you release wastes. But even every little microscopic cell, all the billions of them that build you up, do the same thing.
Where does it go?
Ooh, that's a great question. Okay, I'm so glad you asked. So how does it get there? We eat the food that we eat and it travels to our gut, right? All right, then our gut can suck all the nutrients, all the energy, all the water out, and it puts it into our bloodstream. Or we need oxygen. So we breathe it in, and then our lungs put that oxygen into our bloodstream. So our blood carries food, water, and oxygen to every single cell in all of our body. But not only that, your blood also gets the waste that they release. Now eventually, your blood travels to your liver and your bladder and other
and kidneys. And it
kidneys,
gets
yep.
filtered.
And so those organs filter out the bad stuff. And then we go to the restroom and
So
you flush.
Cells waste. Wait, so cells waste turns into our waste.
Exactly. So our cells' waste actually turns into our own waste
That's fine.
eventually.
I have another.
You-
Now another one,
Wait, what do you
oxygen. We take oxygen and we need it, right? Our cells give off carbon dioxide gas. That's sent back to our lungs. So when we breathe in what we need. When we breathe out,
That's why we breathe out carbon dioxide.
we breathe out carbon dioxide gas.
So then where's the oxygen that goes
another
into our
waste.
cells? That's why it's warm.
So it's all moved
See,
by our
we can
blood,
talk
isn't it?
about-
That makes more sense.
All right, isn't it so cool? We get to talk about some really nasty stuff in science.
Wait, but Mr. Whitaker, another thing is, don't cells want to keep out like cells that have? So when a cell reproduces and then the cell somehow the DNA code is not correct, or there's a little what's it, like a mistake in the DNA code, do the other cells want to keep that cell or out of it?
Great point. We are actually getting there. We'll learn about that.
Okay, good.
Now, you bring up a good point, and I want to add this to our notes, okay? In fact, some of the things that your food brings to your body are called, I need a new mark, are called proteins, and we get that a lot through meat. Another thing we eat and we get from our food are carbs.
Yummy.
And another thing we get are called lipids. Now, I know you're probably going, what? What are those words? But basically, all of those three things are within the food that we eat. But it takes these three ingredients to build brand new cells. So you're talking about this cell needs to reproduce and make another cell, right? So from the food that we eat, the cell gets these ingredients and then rebuilds and builds new DNA and new cells. So anyway, let's go ahead and add that in as well, okay? I like that.
It says also in our book a lipid bilayer.
Yes, your book gets a little bit more in depth about the lipids and the carbs and the proteins. We're not going to go as deep there as a class. On the other hand, if you want to individually, you're more than welcome to do that. All right. So cytology. This should be a brand new word for you. On the other hand, you've heard this before. You remember reading a resource and you came across this word, histology. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
In histology, we study cells. Well, sorry, in science we love to give everything multiple names. But you do need to know that cytology is the same thing as histology.
Wait.
They're both the study of cells. So I think it was a resource I gave you, the history of cells. Remember that handout that I gave you? It called it histology, whereas your textbook calls it cytology. But they're the same thing. They're both the study of cells. Okay, so I'm going to pull the screen back down. Hopefully you have your beautiful cell drawn with its cell membrane protecting it, allowing the good stuff in, releasing the waste, keeping the bad stuff out. Yes?
Is there a point where cells can't handle that? Like they just stop and they eventually do let that stuff in?
It's called
It's
dying.
basically
You
like
can, your immune system can get weak, and your blood cells basically battle for you. And if your immune system is weak, then maybe your blood cells can't battle as good as they need to, which allows your cells to absorb things they shouldn't absorb. Yeah. Good question.
So your immune system is our cells that fight off.
The main part of your immune system, the biggest part, is your white blood cells.
Okay.
In your blood, you have red blood cells, which carry all the food, all the nutrition, all the oxygen, and the waste. But the white blood cells are the ones that are your fighters.
So
They
that's
fight.
why if you have like an infection or a virus, your white blood cell count is higher.
It's impacted. Yeah. And a lot of times, if you have something bad in your body triggers and it goes, ooh, we get an invader, let's make more white blood cells.
Okay.
So it's trying to fight off that virus or bacteria.
Do the white blood cells die afterwards?
Mhm.
Or okay.
In fact, many times when they fight for you, they die for you. Is that an image of someone we know? Oh.
Think
Jesus Christ fought for us and died for us.
Oh.
So, anyway. All right, well, let's switch gears here. your book gives you this really big term. It's called selectively permeable membranes.
Yay!
That's kind of big, hairy, and scary, isn't it? But you know what? It's not really. It's really very simple. So let's look at selectively permeable membranes. What in the world are they? Well, if you just look at the words, we can figure this out. They're selective. If I ask you to be selective about something, for example, Max, and if I say, Max, would you please select your favorite candy? Then you use your brain to figure out which one is your top pick, right? Ooh. Now then, so selectively, it's being selective, right? Permeable. If we have a big rain outside, and I say, oh, the ground, the water is permeating in the ground. That means the ground is absorbing it, right? So a selectively permeable membrane, your cells have a cell membrane, right? It's the cell membrane being selective about what it allows to permeate or absorb.
So it's basically like your cell membrane picking their favorite foods.
Exactly. Your cell membranes get a choice. They get to pick. Wait, now hold on, Maxon. If I told you to pick, you had to use your brain, didn't you? Does that mean that cells have brains too? Since they get to select and pick?
That's, wait a minute. They have something similar to a brain.
They do. Ha!
That's what I said.
Yes, every cell in your body has like its a little own brain. It's called a nucleus. And we'll learn more about that, okay? But the nucleus gets to pick and choose what the cell it's in or doesn't let in. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? So inside you are billions and billions of little tiny nuclei or brains. Ooh. All right, so let's add a definition for selectively permeable. It sounds scary, but it's not. It's basically when your cell membrane allows certain molecules in and says no to other molecules.
Didn't scientists found that actually a microscopic eyes that can see what they're doing? Yeah. Yeah. Not like eyes, but they can know what they're doing. I'm gonna see what it is.
Sometimes Alright, so selectively permeable. Really, it's not that difficult, is it? So let's say this is like your cell membrane, the boundary of your cell. Here you have kind of a tunnel or channel that can open up and allow certain things in.
It's like a water slide.
It can open up and let stuff out. Or it could simply close and shut down and say, thou shalt not enter.
Like Big Brother.
Like a water slide.
Kind of like a water slide or a water chute. Yep.
Looks like a water slide.
Okay.
Did you say a water chute?
Now, so selectively permeable, we've defined that, right? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get into two types of transport. Now notice transport sounds a lot like transportation, right? If something is going inside the cell, is it getting transported? If something's moving outside of the cell, is it getting transported? Oh. So active and passive transport deal with things getting transported or moved through a cell membrane. And there are two types. There's active transport. It's active. Sounds active, doesn't it? And there's passive. You ever ran into someone with a passive personality?
What's that?
Like in Minecraft, there are passive mobs.
If you're passive, you're just kind of there. You're not really doing much. You're just kind of there.
My brother at church.
No. So passive means you're not using energy, right? So in passive transport, it's the same thing. Passive transport involves no energy from the cell. The cell can just sit there like a blob and just take things in and push things out. It doesn't use any energy. It's effortless. It's passive. So passive transport is a way that a cell can move things without using any energy at all.
Oh, wait, never mind. Conservation. Wait, actually, so energy as in like, it takes energy to do this, or actual like kinetic energy?
Energy overall, so not just kinetic. Good point. But basically, the cell just sits there. It doesn't have to exert any energy to absorb something
Okay.
or to
So
allow
like,
it to go through.
it's technically using energy by moving, but it doesn't actually use the food.
Well,
to
the
make
cell can be
energy.
moving, doing its everyday jobs,
Mhm.
but it doesn't require any effort to allow it to come in or out of its cell membrane. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Whereas on the other hand, active transport, the cell has to actively push it out and use its own energy.
Like,
So,
if you put a cup under water,
mhm.
it'll fill up, but if you squeeze the cup, you have to squeeze it to shoot it out.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great analogy. All right, so there are two types of passive transport that you need to know about. And the reality is you're going to be dealing with these two types of transport in your lab tomorrow. Now, the first one that you guys need to know about, the first passive transport, is what we call diffusion. Can you say diffusion? Oh, that was weak now. Come on, don't be so passive.
Diffusion.
Diffusion, yes, thank you. You're being more active now. So in diffusion, this would be a perfect example. If I take a drop of dye and I drop that food coloring into this cup of water, the drop's not going to, it's not going to just stay in one spot, right? The drop spreads out. The same thing happens in diffusion. That is an example of diffusion. It's when molecules spread out. Yes?
Can't you basically do like man-made diffusion where you make the cells or make the molecules diffuse like that sort of, but wait a minute. So like if you took hot water and let the condensation, would that be osmosis though?
If it's involving water, it's going to be osmosis.
Okay, that's
Diffusion can be anything,
okay.
but osmosis always involves water, okay? And that's where we're headed next. So diffusion could be, here's an example. If I were to take cologne, let's say I just came from gym and I'm real smelly, so I want to spray some Axe on myself, as junior high guys do a lot. That Axe would diffuse the whole room, wouldn't it? Eventually the whole room would smell like Axe, right?
What's
In fact, how many of you guys have a diffuser at home?
I need one.
Oh.
I have one.
So a diffuser takes some kind of smelly good fragrance, right? And diffuses it throughout your house. So your house smells nice and floofy and good, or
Fruity.
fruity, whatever your fragrance is. I don't know. Yes?
I am a diffuser. If something smells bad, I like spray any kind of perfume everywhere.
Yeah,
So you can be a diffuser.
Yeah.
I spray. So my sisters get headaches from me spraying stuff all over the house.
Oh, really?
But I'm like, ew, this room smells bad. So then I take like a Febreze or an air freshener,
Yeah.
just like go
That's
all over the
diffusion.
room.
That's why we don't keep
And
this
then
in our house.
my sisters are like, what did you spray in here? I'm like, it smells
My
fine.
sister
Yeah.
does the same.
So that's a perfect example of diffusion. So diffusion is simply taking a bunch of molecules that are packed together and then spreading them out. It's that simple. So just like this food coloring, all the food coloring was in one spot and then it spread out. Or just like you spraying Febreze or whatever it is you're spraying in the house, and perfume. In the bottle, it's concentrated, but then when you squirt the bottle, it diffuses, it spreads out. Now, what I'm going to do here in just a moment is show you kind of on a molecular level or atomic level what that looks like. So what does diffusion look like when we're talking about atoms? So if we were to home in and zoom in on the individual atoms that die here, they would be tightly packed, wouldn't they? They'd be close together. But then through diffusion, they spread out. So diffusion really looks like this. You have a lot of atoms or molecules packed together, and then through diffusion, they're spread out. In fact, the last class, someone said, hey, this is like before COVID, and this is like us after COVID.
Yeah.
We're socially distanced.
Yeah.
Well, that is a great analogy.
Exactly.
I love that.
We're diffused.
Oh my gosh, we could like post
We are
that.
diffusing from each other.
That'd
We're
be funny.
socially distancing ourselves, right?
What Providence is learning in science class? Social distancing.
Social distance
No,
compared
social
to diffusion.
diffusion.
Alright, now I'm going to show you a real cool picture here. The next picture is diffusion that's happening in your bodies right now. Aren't you excited, Jack? Oh, this is some cool stuff inside. Now, inside your bodies, your blood is moving food, energy, water, and oxygen. And it's diffusing it and sending it and spreading it out to all the billions of cells that build you up. So here's diffusion in you.
Ooh.
Now, years ago, I took the kids to this really cool exhibit in Branson, Missouri. It's not there anymore, but what they did is they took human bodies and they injected the veins, capillaries, and arteries with plastic. And then they dunked the bodies into acid. And the acid ate away all the flesh and all the tissues except for the plastic in the veins.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the cool
The
thing
acid
was,
is-
it was amazing. You could see all the detail that God put into our body to get blood moving anywhere and everywhere.
I would be scarred for life if I was the scientist who got to watch that.
Yeah.
It was great.
No, but
It was
imagine
only-
watching flesh melt off plastic.
We didn't get to watch that, yeah.
That would have actually been
That would have been
cool.
creepy, yeah.
That's
That'd be
like
kind of cool, but then kind of like.
that's what happened in Keeper of the Lost
Now,
Cities.
I
the
know.
bad news about this exhibit is later on we did a little bit of research to learn more about them, and they were all Chinese, and they were all former prisoners.
What happened?
Their bodies got donated to science.
Oh.
So, don't go to China
And be
and get in prison because you might end up as their science project.
No, I'm not. My mom was even saying that they were
Wait, are you
like
for real?
I'm
They-
for real.
don't donate, basically forced to donate their organs. So alive, the people are taking them to surgery and their organs taken out and donated.
Dude.
Wait. While
Now
they're
you can
alive?
choose
Oh,
to
yeah.
be you can
Why
choose
did
to
you
be an
say that?
organ donor, or you can choose to donate your body to
My
science.
mom is an organ.
My mom's
In
not
fact,
a donor too.
One of our really good friends is when she passed away, she was not only an organ donor, but she wanted to donate her body to science. So basically, that means that her body can be used by medical students, so that they could cut her body open before they cut your body open, which is a good thing. I mean, don't you want your doctor to be cutting on someone else before they cut on you?
Oh yeah.
Or they could just not.
Wait, but I would not want to be the guy or the person who was the robot decision thingies to be
Yeah.
tested on that. Because what if the robot like
Did it also not melt
programmed
off their
that?
fingernails? Because there's something white.
I think I can't really. I don't know what that is exactly.
If that
But
is
I don't know if it's just.
They need to clip those fingers.
Wait.
But here's the main point. The main point is diffusion is going on in your body right now. So your blood's delivering food, water, oxygen to all your cells. And it's also taking away wastes from your cells. And it's all because of diffusion happening in you. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? All right, yes.
Were the people alive or dead?
Oh, they.
Think about it.
After doing the research, I think they died in prison.
Okay.
And then, yeah, that's.
Okay.
Mr.
Oh.
Whitaker,
That
so
helps me a little bit.
if you look at the capillaries and the veins,
So here's a main artery, right?
yeah, you can see that at in the middle of your fingers there's less,
Mhm.
and then on the very tips, where you can feel the most,
Mhm.
there's way more.
Yeah, excellent point. In the tips of our fingers, we have more nerve endings because God knew we needed to feel on the tips of our fingers well, right? So we have more nerve endings, but not only that, we have more blood in the tips of our fingers as well. Pretty cool, isn't it? God gives us exactly what we need
too, I'm cool.
to allow us to function the way we need to function. Diffusion in you, right? We learned one type of passive transport, diffusion. We have one more to go. Now, it's not hard, it's not difficult. Basically, it's the same thing as diffusion, but it's using one ingredient.
Your skin.
Water. So the diffusion of water is what we call osmosis. Let me hear you say osmosis.
Osmosis.
Now,
Oh, we get to do that.
osmosis is simply the diffusion of water. So we have a lot of water in one area and we spread it out, don't we?
Mr.
Now, there's a really nifty experiment you get to do tomorrow using osmosis in eggs. I hope you're excited about it. Now, in this egg experiment that you are so excited about, you need 3 eggs, you need vinegar, you need corn syrup, you need water, and if you have a small kitchen scale, you'll need it. If you don't have a small kitchen scale, don't go out and buy one, okay? If you don't have one, just skip that step or that portion. Also, I'm going to show you a video, and in this video, it's going to share and show steps of what we can do to an egg to show how osmosis can happen in an egg. Because by the way, an egg is one giant cell.
What? Really? An egg is only one
Now,
cell?
what we have to do this experiment is all we need to do is simply remove the eggshell so that we get it down to just the cell membrane. So yes, we're going to make our eggs naked. We're going to remove the shell from our egg, making it a naked egg, and then we're going to put it through different tests to see how it can absorb or soak in water or push out water. Osmosis, right? All right. Yes?
So, would sneezing or coughing be diffusion?
Yes.
But
Oh,
that's
yeah.
If we're sneezing, it's diffusing, right?
Huh.
This is diffusion.
And it is the diffusion of water.
So we are a diffusion.
Yeah. So you could be a diffuser in multiple ways, but we're not going to focus on any other ways. All right, yes?
I have a reverse osmosis filtered water.
Reverse osmosis.
Oh, like smart water. That's right.
All right, so we'll get to do osmosis in multiple ways with the egg. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually show you an egg experiment. I know you guys are excited.
no, we're not exciting.
We're just
I am. I saw my little.
Or maybe you're ecstatic.
Oh my god.
ha ha ha.
There you
I'm sorry, am I exaggerating too much?
No.
That's
Do
exactly.
not,
what I was
You do
Exactly.
not want to be like my dad, okay?
Dad jokes are
Why?
awesome.
No.
You guys act like you don't like them, but I know you do.
Have you watched Mark Rober?
Yes, he has
Yes,
a lot of
he's
awesome
so
videos.
good.
So what I'm going to do here is pull up this experiment for you. These guys are going to take an egg, take the shell off. You're going to do the same thing. You do this with 3 eggs. Now your experiment is different than this experiment, okay? It's not exactly the same. So I want you to at least watch it though and get familiar with kind of what you're doing. But just know this is not exactly what you're doing, okay? So there's so many ways to put egg in here.
Oh my gosh, the episode name is The Naked Egg and Osmosis.
Extremely excited for
Ex-
this egg experiment.
Oh, that was good.
Mr. Whitaker.
All right.
Now,
Now,
get on camera. You just stop.
so here's what we need to know about our homework. You're going to receive this handout. If you're joining us virtually, you can find it attached to our Google Classroom account. Now then, this experiment will take you 8 days. So you start it on Wednesday, and on Wednesday you follow the day 1, Wednesday, September 30th directions.
What if you start it tonight?
Well, then you'll be off, okay? So I would go ahead and just start it tomorrow. Stay with the dates that are on your paper, okay? Now then, you'll start it on Wednesday, then you check it again on Friday, and it tells you what to do then. And then eventually you check it again next Wednesday, and then finally on Thursday of next week, you turn all this in, okay? Now, like I said, your exciting experiment is not exactly like the 5th graders are doing, and it's not exactly like what you saw on the screen, but it's your own egg experiment.
Do we get to pick the liquids?
Nope, they're selected for you, okay? Sorry if that was too many egg jokes.
You could never have too many eggs.
Although they always crack me up.
Oh my god. I hear egg one more time.
Egg.